going on, RotoGrinders? Welcome back to the NFL Pick Six Show, Week 7 variety. We bring in two of the best analysts in all fantasy football, break down 3 games from every angle as far as the main slate on Week 7. And, of course, we run it back and talk about all the running backs, receivers, quarterbacks, tight ends, all that good stuff that we don't talk about in the 3 main games. The usual suspects, the same contestants, returning champion, Rich Hribar. He spent all his winnings from last week on this fabulous new camera. What's up, Hribar, from Sharp Football Analysis?
Well, I don't have
people, man. It's popping.
I don't have the camera yet. This is just the same radiant glow of winning a few bucks in week 6.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you can tell, but I do not have a radiant glow. I had way too much Kareem Hunt. It was not a good week for your boy, but hey, that's why it's daily fantasy sports, man. Whatever happened last week, forget it. We care about today and today only.
This is why we fade the chalk on this show.
Yeah, well, I have a heart. Kareem Hunt was such good. It was, in theory, it was good chalk.
No, it was great. He was good chalk.
Oh, man. Well, what do you
objective chalk? He was good.
He was super popular. We didn't even talk about him last week because, of course, we record this show on a Wednesday night, and Kareem Hunt wasn't really a thing last Wednesday night. And that's something to keep in mind when you guys listen to us. Of course, a lot of people listen to us live, but most catch us on the replay, on the RotoGrinders podcast feed, on the YouTube as well. What up, YouTube? Do subscribe, turn on notifications, all that good stuff. Also joining us, as usual, John Daigle from NBC Sports, and also a Good Football Show pod. I was just listening to you about an hour or two ago as I was tilting my basketball contest. A lot of fun. I did mention basketball. Yeah, here in RotoGrinders, check us out. 5:20 every single weekday, more or less. That's like the general time, but if you guys are playing basketball DFS, grind at it, have some fun, join us. And we're helping you guys out winning some money in the basketball streets. It's good times for sure. Super excited basketball's back. Daigle, how was your week 6? How are things in your world?
I don't know what basketball is from October to December, but I'm sure everyone should check out the show because I'm sure it's good. Yeah, an okay week. I couldn't get off the Patrick Mahomes double stack, and I had J.D. McKissick as well, but the afternoon was still what won it for everyone. I saw the nuts. I think Go Sixers Go, of course, took down FanDuel for the most part with Dak, CD, and then Jacoby Myers run back, even though Myers didn't have a touchdown. Almost did, but they cheated, so they took it back. And then, of course, also had Darrell Henderson and Cooper Kupp. So just an interesting stack to note, especially the running back, wide receiver, and a high team total non-quarterback stack, because that's kind of where we're at for this fun slate. 4 teams have 30-plus point team totals, 3 of which are favored by 13 points, 2 that are favored by 16 points. So a lot of blowout game scripts, but also blowouts. That means the team was efficient offensively. That's what I was going for, to that point of the blowout. So it's an interesting slate for sure.
Yeah, you have a general thought in that, Hribar, as far as this week? And I know the season-long guys are freaking out because all their good players are not playing. No Dallas, no Buffalo, no Jacksonville, no Chargers, no Minnesota, no Pittsburgh. Of course, season-long you can play these guys, but as far as the slate we're talking about, the 10-gamer, we're not talking Denver, Cleveland on Thursday night. Thank God. That's going to be miserable, I think. Sunday night, Indianapolis, San Fran. What a terrible game. Indy, San Fran on Sunday night. Yeah, we're not talking about that one. And of course, New Orleans and Seattle were spared that one as well. But yeah, Hribar, and especially in the late set of games, like the last 3 of the last 4 games of the 4:00 block are just all like 14, 15 point totals as far as lines. So what's your general thought before we dive in and break it down? The three key games we're going to talk about in a second. But you have a general overarching, how to approach this slate?
That those are all really good teams, and that's why they're favored that high, and they're probably going to score a lot of points. So we can pivot to those guys. CD was my savior. Like when he was my pivot, I just started dumping dudes out. I came off of a lot of Kareem Hunt to get the CD in the late. Like that was just the guy. That was the pivot when the stuff that didn't go magically well. In Washington, Kansas City, all the pieces in that one, we went there. So that one saved me. But yeah, I mean, look at you. If you're winning at 1, you've got to contend in the late games with probably the Rams scoring 30 plus on the Lions, Tampa Bay scoring 30 plus on the Bears, and the Cardinals scoring 30 plus on the Texans. And then we've got the other game that we're going to talk about. So, I mean, there are going to be points scored on at least one side of those. And, anytime that the one side's going to score 30, you never know what's going to come along with the other side, what kind of game script or what kind of weird things can happen in the second half of those games. So yeah, I mean, this would be another week where, don't be alarmed if, you're not winning at 1 and, Chiefs and Titans got there. There'll be options here for some high scoring games and some high scoring game environments later in the day.
Also, if you are winning at 1 and victory lapping, I would hold off on that this week.
No one does that. I think everyone's learned enough, I think, by now, except for on Twitter. But
Right.
that you don't count any of that money, any of the green that's like there at like 3:00 Eastern. You don't count. You don't count any of that.
4 o'clock green doesn't pay the bills.
I was listening to the OG's podcast earlier today, and Head Chopper was talking about how he was well ahead. He was doing really well. I think he was first in a contest, like with 2 minutes left in the Dallas game, and he wasn't screenshot lifing or anything like that. But what happened was somebody congratulated him and said, "Hey, congrats, Chop, you crushed it," or whatever. Way to take it down. And then he's like, "Yeah, I ended up losing money." Like, 3 touchdowns later, whatever it was, and this is like a minute or two left, and the 2 touchdowns in a minute or whatever. It's rough. I mean, Chop's going to be all right. He's won $1 million
I think he'll be okay.
twice. I think
he'll be okay.
Not going to take out a second mortgage on the house. I think he'll be okay, but it's just interesting how that works out. And
also, I know the cost of living in San Antonio. I'm not going to hear him complain.
Is it cheap? It's a nice city. I've been. Water.
It's nice for one day.
What's that hidden little underground world that's where you go?
The Riverwalk?
Yeah, Riverwalk.
You made it sound like Alice in Wonderland. I'm sure you probably.
I remember
in the rabbit hole is
down.
probably more enticing than the Riverwalk 48 hours. But also, like the suburbs of San Antonio, I believe is where he lives around. Like that area is really nice. They got some good cocktail bars, by the way.
Hey man, I'm gonna take a road trip one of these days and hang out with Chopper and hit out. I'm sure Austin's not too far away. I've heard good things about Austin, but all right. First game on the slate. One of these games ain't like the rest. Kansas City and Tennessee. 56 is the total. It's the biggest total on the board. Tennessee at home getting 5.5 points coming off that Monday night game. Daigle, you want to open it up for us? Kansas City, it's Mahomes he had some weird interceptions last week. One that wasn't really his fault. One that was really goofy. Washington, of course, didn't keep up, unfortunately, so they couldn't really put the pedal, in the fourth quarter there. Didn't really happen for the Kansas City pieces. Tyreek was in and out. I'm not certain. I couldn't really understand what Twitter was saying. He was getting benched or if he was hurt as far as why he was out for a while. And then he came back. He did score a touchdown to kind of salvage. But this week against Tennessee, assuming Tyreek is good to go, again, this is Wednesday night. Who knows about injuries and all that. But I imagine we'll start with the Kansas City side here, Daigle. It's just a matter of salary cap. Can we keep these guys in? Can we afford them? Is this where we want to spend our big bucks?
They didn't get there, oddly enough, despite the fact that Mahomes passed for 397 yards, 2 touchdowns, and averaged 8.4 yards per attempt. Of course, it's the turnovers that's holding this team back as a whole to winning. 14, a league high this year, whereas the Jaguars, for instance, are in second with just 12. Fumble luck, of course, will always regress. It always does annually. The issue is that the mistakes that Mahomes makes, like his falling down interceptions, while he does make plays from those are probably just going to stick with Mahomes his entire career because he's capable of extending plays doing that. But still, not a big deal. This team is still third overall in yards per play at 6.2, right behind the Cowboys and Rams. They are still 6th in red zone scoring percentage on the year and first overall in points per drive. Nothing stops this train at all except the turnovers, and that's just in the winning category because everything else, the offense is still clicking perfectly. Titans have also allowed at least 27 points in 4 of 6 games this year, the only exceptions being common foes in 2 divisional games against the Colts and Jaguars. Also, the Titans just lost. Chris Fulton got moved to IR. Their quarterback room was already awful. And now they put that awfulness on IR and first-round cornerback Caleb Farley and Fulton, throwing Breon Borders and whoever else they can drag from the UPS delivery room onto the field by Sunday. And so overall for the Chiefs offense, especially through the air, we're not concerned whatsoever. Even in Tyreek Hill running the 3rd most routes on the team, I don't think it was benching because, imagine benching Tyreek Hill ever. It was more or less he was dealing with that quad injury that he was DMP midweek and then got in a limited session on Friday. Still the 3rd most routes, but still to lead the team in targets and finish with just fewer than 100 yards and still score a touchdown. He's still just fine, even if he's limited. If we get a limited practice on Thursday even, we should have even more confidence.
All right. Jump in here, Hribar, as far as your thoughts on the Kansas City side. And as far as the key pieces, Tyreek or Kelsey, which one do you have a lean to? Of course, obviously they're both really good, but if you can only have one, who's going to more likely to exploit this Tennessee defense?
Probably still Tyreek. I mean, just because the cornerbacks are so bad. The back end is so tough in Tennessee. They're 29th in yards per target allowed to opposing wide receivers, 29th in fantasy points allowed per target. They've allowed 10 touchdowns to opposing wide receivers. Yeah. So, I mean, I'd still lean Tyreek. And then also, if there's one spot you're always willing to kind of not pay all the way up for, it's still tight end. And there's only one tight end to pay up for. So yeah, I mean, that's really it. I have no problem with Kelsey. They both get there. I mean, you see, like, it's not always just like a this or that thing with these guys. Like, I mean, they're the two most productive receivers on the team again last week. So if you want to choose the other one, no pushback. I do tend to lean towards Tyreek if everything checks out and he's healthy. Like John said, I mean, this team is really the only one stopping them is themselves. I mean, they punted 10 times this year, but the fewest in the league. They're also forcing the second lowest punts per drive top position. So we'll see what we get here. They are by far the worst run defense in the NFL, and they're facing Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, I don't know what we'll even say anymore about Derrick Henry. I mean, since week 1, he has 240 more rushing yards to the next closest player. The dude just he's constantly getting there. We joked last week about oh, this will be the week he doesn't get there because he's not on the main slate. He still had a 76-yard touchdown run. Now he's back on the main slate as the most expensive price he's been all year against this Chiefs team. I mean, really the only way they can stop him is if the Chiefs go up like 20. That might even be not enough. They might have to go up like 30 because we saw in the Seattle game in week 2 when they're chasing double digits, they still just keep handing it off to him. And that's because you can't trust this passing game really at all. And it's not really, I don't know really where we draw the blame. I mean, there's a lot of moving parts. 1, this team is due regression for 2 years. Maybe it's just finally happening. 2, their offensive line is worse than it's ever been over this 3-year stretch. They don't have Arthur Smith. And the wide receiving core has been, shuffling in and guys in and out of the lineup the entire season. So you kind of put that cocktail all together and you've got some inefficient play. Also, despite them kind of having some inefficient play, they have 18 offensive touchdowns. That's 9th in the NFL. The only thing is the same thing we talked about last week. 12 of them are rushing touchdowns. They're second in the NFL in rushing touchdown rate, even with Derrick Henry scoring a touchdown seemingly every game the past 2 years. 55% of their touchdowns were passing last year and 49.5% the year before that. Right now, it's at 33%, just 6 passing touchdowns. Ryan Tannehill's a 3% touchdown rate. So, I mean, eventually, again, those things oscillate back. They swing back. Maybe this is the spot where it does. I wish that, Tannehill, though, for the way he's played so far this season, he's not priced the way he's played. People are still banking on him every week of being an efficient and potentially getting out of this slump. On FanDuel, he's 7,600 still. I was expecting to open the app and be oh, maybe we can go back to Tannehill this week. He'll be 7K. And he's priced all the way up. So I'm well, what the hell, man? What are we really doing here? But yeah, I mean, that's kind of where we are. We don't know if Julio Jones is going to play. AJ Brown showed some life on Monday night to kind of give us a little bit of faith of going back to him. His pricing was frozen because it was on Monday night. So as a, alternative game stack, if you're not paying up for that ultimate dollar of the big dog, you can't do the ultimate game stack here. You can't go Mahomes big dog. You can't go Mahomes big dog, Tyreek or Kelsey. It's just, you're out of dough.
I mean, FanDuel, even if you go, let's say you want to start your running backs at Derrick Henry and Darrell Henderson, that's already $19K of your salary. It's absolutely insane since Derrick Henry is $11K on the week. And you know what? I can't argue against it because Bills were the top defense in EPA rushing, all advanced metrics. But then we found out quickly that your rushing defense is only as good as Derrick Henry allows it to be, as he had 140 yards and 3 touchdowns. Also, Jeremy McNichols was injured in that game in pregame warmups, and they don't have another third down option except Derrick Henry. That's why he handled 100% of the backfield touches. So if that's the case again, and the backup running back is only their fullback, Corey Blasingame, as Mekhi Sargent and Darrington Evans is still on IR, are out, that's also another reason, well, okay, maybe you do roster Derrick Henry at whatever price since he's going to get every single touch.
All right, so a couple things here. It's just really interesting because you guys talking about Henry. He's 11K on FanDuel. They are not messing around.
They shouldn't, man. I love when sites that's what sites should do. It's remember when FanDuel used to do it too with Russell Westbrook. Remember Russell Westbrook would just go nuclear, and they're well, we just got to make this dude 12K.
Yeah,
it's
and you'd still pay it and find a way to make it work. Yeah, and you guys were talking about the Kansas City. Nothing stops that train. Henry, he is the one who knocks for Tennessee. So here's the interesting point here as far as I run my optimals, right? I run 100 optimals, 150 optimals before the show, and I'll go on. The point is, Derrick Henry, what percent is he in the optimal lineup right now? Again, Wednesday night, there's not a lot of injury news that's trickled in. We don't know stuff. 0. He's in 0% of the optimals right now. And again, that doesn't mean you shouldn't play him. Absolutely not. But it's just kind of interesting just because of salary reasons. And also the Chiefs are not in optimals either. They're just not. Right now, Tyreek Hill's a 9% on DK. Kelsey's in 9%. Mahomes in 1%. Just, again, this is Wednesday night. Don't freak out. Things change. Just kind of interesting to sort of note that. AJ Brown had some Chipotle. Is that the story? Because I was watching the game, but I had no volume on it. So I didn't really know what was going on because we were doing a show on air.
It was his post-game interview. He said he was dealing with food poisoning. We knew that part. He was ill. And then he just came out and said, well, one, he's not getting an endorsement anymore. And two, it was Chipotle. It was actually
we need the order though.
It was the same day I had Chipotle for lunch, actually.
Oh. We need the order though. What was the go-to Chipotle?
It was Chipotle and then basically apologizing to Chipotle.
Yeah, Arthur Juan's got to let us know what the go-to Chipotle order was.
Do you have a go-to? It sounds like you have a go-to.
Me? I mean, no. I like to go either chicken or barbacoa if I can.
Hey, let me ask you this. I know you're not in Cincinnati, but you're in Ohio. Are you a Skyline Chili guy? Is that
Hell no.
Oh, I figured I'd get a Skyline take out of you. That was a snap call. It's gross. You're not a fan of Skyline because most people in Cincinnati, like they love that Skyline Chili. No,
it's not it.
Is that just like a tourist trap thing that they don't like? It's just a big lie and anybody comes through.
I think it's like the Cincinnati equivalent of Taco Bell for hangovers because it's literally just spaghetti that is like molded into a ball and then you eat it with a fork and it has overtly yellow cheese on top. So
there's the 3-way, the 4-way, the 5. If you want beans,
right,
cheese, spaghetti.
I've had it one time. And I just still couldn't wrap my head around eating spaghetti at 7 a.m. So
most of those chain places wherever you go are going to be more myth than good. You'll find a local mom and pop place or like whatever place that like Alton Brown, like look up something that like Michael Simon like visited or something on that, like the Food Network. You'll find a better mom and pop place than you will at any of those chains. Most of them will end up a little bit disappointing.
It is the weirdest thing. There is a Skyline right around the corner for me, and I'm in South Florida. Just for no particular reason. I thought they're all in like Ohio, and that's that. But there is.
No, South Florida has like one of everything. Like they'll just have like a Giordano's in like a corner, and you're like, "What the hell is this in Florida?"
Yeah,
but but like ordering, I'm sure you have a favorite spot, but like ordering pizza in Florida, just be careful about what you order. Like if the Skyline Chili's not good in Cincinnati, it's home. Imagine how good it is in Florida.
Florida is a bad pizza state, though.
It's terrible.
It's a terrible pizza state.
You got to import the water from New York. That's what I'm told, right? What's the name of that place? The chain in it's bye week, so we're derailing the show. This is the new concept.
We're going to touch on all the big teams that are scoring. Don't worry. It's okay.
don't worry. But the name of the Pittsburgh place that puts like the fries and the coleslaw.
Primanti Bros.
There was one around the corner from me there. They closed. It didn't work out. But Florida rejected it. Florida's like, nope, this is not good enough.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of Primanti Bros either.
I didn't get it either. It didn't do it for me.
Stick with the Cubanos and the fish. You're just fine.
What else is there to say about this game that's worth noting? Do we like Darrell Williams? It's still his backfield. Did he do enough to justify rostering this week? He scored a touchdown. That's nice.
He's a running back on a team with a 30-point implied team total.
Yeah, there you go. Fair enough.
I mean, it's the same thing we talked about last week, right? Like he's not going to like really wow you, but he's going to be on the field a lot on a team that's going to score a lot of points and have scoring opportunities. He now has 4 touchdowns inside the 5-yard line this year. I mean, it's not overly sexy. You're not going to be excited. He's not going to love the touches he gets, but he's going to be out there on a high-scoring team getting the football. And sometimes that's enough.
Daigle, on a Wednesday night, how confident are we in the health of AJ Brown and Julio Jones? I guess AJ is feeling a little bit healthier, assuming he's digested everything and he's good to go. Julio seems a little bit little trickier, but their prices are cheap and the matchup is good. And in theory, there's some upside if Tannehill finally throws some touchdowns and Henry's not siphoning every single one of them. What are your thoughts as far as them in tournaments?
AJ Brown have full confidence going to play, and we saw all of his production, 7 catches, 91 yards, came in the second half. Probably went to the back, got an IV during intermission, and came back out healthy. Whereas Julio Jones seems like a more touch and go situation. If you told me to lean one direction on a Wednesday, I would say he's not going to play. And if that is the case, it would go to Nick Akine, whatever pronunciation it is, who finished third on the team in routes run, also got his 3 targets on one of those 2 last drives in place of Julio Jones to finish the game. The issue is on a slate where we're trying to spend up on everyone, he's also going to be the one that gets steamed at the end of the day. If Julio Jones is ruled out, he'll probably come in highly rostered in that case.
All right, we'll move on.
The Titans are getting the full Julio experience year one.
This was always the argument too, right? Because in the offseason, like everyone made such a big deal about the trade. And when completely healthy, I understand it. But also every team trades a 2nd round pick for Julio if there was no risk involved. The thing is, there is always risk involved. And now we're seeing the full spectrum.
Do you guys both do like season long ranks and like raw points? That's something you do, I assume, right? And where do you put these players? Because I just don't. I mean, salary is obviously totally different, but it just seems like such a mess. With how do you rank AJ Brown and Julio Jones just the way it's been? And I don't. It feels like they could be top 5 receivers this week, especially AJ Brown, assuming he's the healthier of the 2.
That's pretty much it. You say AJ Brown is a very good player in a team that's going to have to throw the ball most likely, and you shove him up there in the top 12 wide receivers, pretty easy. Julio Jones, you probably stay away from, but also if you're doing rankings, like on the redraft side this week, it's also a all hands on deck week, since it is not only the bye weeks, but also injuries. And so it's not really even a matter of ranking. It's about asking yourself, how do I survive? And then just like starting and picking up these players.
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. Philadelphia at Vegas. Vegas is a 3-point favorite, 49 total in this game. Hribar, the interesting thing, I was pulling up Derek Hardy's The Blitz. Shout out the Blitz there for Derek Hardy. This game, amongst all the games on I think it's just on the regular slate. I think it's just the main slate. Maybe it's all. I'm not really certain. I want to misquote it. But it's projected to have the most plays. The more plays, the more fantasy points. It's projected to have 133.5 plays, to get all precise and all technical. So let's talk about the Vegas side first. Did you notice anything different post Gruden as far as how they ran their offense, or it's basically the same?
I mean, they ran a lot more play action. 31% of Derek Carr's dropbacks were used play action. It was just 11.5% through 5 weeks. It's interesting because the Eagles don't run a lot of plays. So it's interesting that this one will get there. And then I also have a funny feeling this week, and it's more of a hunch, that they're going to run the football a lot more this week than they have. We saw that a little bit in the second half of last week. I mean, to be honest, though, who the hell knows? Because what does Nick Sirianni like showed us at all right now in terms of game planning? It's been an absolute mess what they're doing. I mean, they're not using any play action. They're not using any pre-snap motion. They're not using really any designed runs for Jalen Hurts either. So I don't really know. But I do get the feeling that they are going to run the football, because Miles Sanders has really increased his snaps the past 2 weeks, 84%. And 92% of the backfield touches. He was efficient the past 2 weeks. He's run 20 times for 101 yards. He actually ran well against the Bucs on the little bit of opportunities that they had. And then you're facing a Raiders team that is completely susceptible to being run on. So I do think that we'll get some Miles Sanders. I like him. I think he's an interesting play this week. It might just be a product of the landscape, and I'm just seeing whatever I need to see this week to get through. But I do like him. I mean, obviously Jalen Hurts he keeps sucking out. He keeps getting there. He's literally the walking Aaron Paul meme, because if you watch Jalen Hurts, especially he's on an island game, you see all the tweets come out for 3 quarters. This is why this guy's terrible. We've been waiting for this moment all week, even though he keeps scoring 20 points a week. And then the fourth quarter comes around, he just gets 2 rushing touchdowns and twists the knife into the heart of all of those tweets for 3 hours. So, I mean, you hate to see it, or you really love to see it. But he's the only quarterback now that's been a QB1 scorer in all 6 weeks this season. He's got over 20 fantasy points in every game. He keeps finding a way to get there. And what's interesting about this matchup is the Raiders don't blitz. They blitz at the lowest rate in the NFL. And you would say typically be like, oh, that's awesome then, right? Like, you're not blitzing a young quarterback. He's going to sit back. But it's really crazy is that Hurts is actually a lot better versus the blitz so far this year. He's averaging just under 9 yards per pass attempt against the blitz, and 5 of his passing touchdowns have come against the blitz. It's almost like he doesn't want to be throwing into zones and being comfortable. You want to flood windows for him, because he's not a highly accurate passer. He's 3rd in the NFL from the bottom in expected completion rate. Another guy like Justin Fields is last, similar kind of archetype. So it's gonna be really interesting to see how this plays out. But like I said, he keeps getting there from a rushing perspective. I won't take up all the clock here because there's a lot of avenues to cover here. Because I see this game getting a lot of a pub, but man, there is a lot of interesting dynamics in this game from offensive, defense, tactical layout here that like these things could go south for a couple of these passing games really easy.
We made the Breaking Bad references earlier in the show today. Is the Aaron Paul gif? Is that a Breaking Bad gif? Which gif is that?
It is the Aaron Paul gif.
Which one is it though?
That's the one he can't keep getting away with it.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's the one. Yeah. That's and I tweeted out basically the same thing with Jalen Hurts. Like just roster him every single week and don't watch the game because you're gonna tilt so hard.
He's averaged 156 passing yards the past 2 games and finished as the QB6 and QB8 on the week. And I understand it's been little bunny touchdowns inside the 5-yard line, but that's what Jalen Hurts do. That's what he does best. So that's okay.
Regression says that's supposed to change, I guess, but like you said, that's just sort of what he does as well. And he siphons touchdowns away from Miles Sanders. I see in the chat you're talking about Miles Sanders and Josh Duck. Miles Sanders is tempting. Miles Sanders lock button according to Swaggy P. 5.1K.
My guy.
Speaking of great gifts, the Swaggy P gift where you're taking the shot and you're like, I got it. He turns around.
It's playing Miles Sanders this week. That's what it's gonna be. It's been premeditated. He's Swaggy P is a precog from Minority Report. He's letting us know.
We also have to wait and see. That's why it's a tepid situation because Dallas Goedert still on the COVID list, and also Zach Ertz traded. Unlike Zach Ertz, Dallas Goedert can eclipse 30 receiving yards if he's going to play 88% of the snaps like Ertz did. We also saw different coaching staff, of course, but Goddard ran a route on 89% of Philadelphia's dropbacks in his 4 starts without Ertz last season. And we saw them also increase their rate of 11 personnel with only 1 tight end, right? They have Richard Rodgers on the practice squad. Tyree Jackson activated from injured reserve, or at least had his window opened up. But overall, like they're not going to run 12 personnel because like that's what just they're going to do. They did that because they had 2 above average tight ends to play. Now they seemingly only have 1. And that's why Kez Watkins, we've seen the past 2 weeks run a route on 76% of Jalen Hurts' dropbacks. Also, we saw him get a 19% target share this past week. Devontae Smith still trying to get that touchdown regression as he's 14th in air yards overall, but has scored only once on 2 end zone targets all season. So yeah, there are quite a few different ways to play this game.
Talking about the Raiders, again, anything you see as far, I see in the chat they're talking about the potential. I think that's producer Devin talking about a potential Darren Waller breakout game. He was spectacular week 1, kind of up and down since then when you consider the salary you're paying for him. We see Ruggs seemingly catch a bomb basically every single week. How excited are you about the Raiders side here, Daigle? And I guess add in Derek Carr. We didn't really talk about him, but he's there. He's playable, I guess, but I don't get too excited about him.
Right. Like Rich noted, we saw them essentially double their play action rate since the play calling duties changed from John Gruden to Greg Olsen. But also Derek Carr, I wonder if it was just matchup based too, since they went in to scheming to attack the Broncos cover 1 man-to-man scheme. And that's what you even saw Carr backpedaling a couple times and just launching one-on-one coin toss opportunities downfield. He did hit 4 of his 6 targets, 20 plus yards downfield. And we know in particular on the year, Henry Ruggs, 39% of his targets have been accrued from 20 plus yards downfield, as like that's where he's going to as an efficient player too, who can haul those in. So that's kind of where where I'm going to roster this passing game overall. Derek Carr also, that was, after starting the year with 300 plus yards and multiple touchdowns in both games, and then going backwards with 210 yards or fewer and multiple turnovers in both games and 2 games after that, we then saw him come back to what he was doing previously with 300 yards and multiple touchdowns. I also wonder, this is a bit narrative-y, but I wonder, we've seen this so many times about like emotional highs after coaching changes. And then like, this is what we do in the betting world too. And then now the next game, that's why I didn't have money on the Broncos because I couldn't trust them in this spot. But now like afterwards, I just wonder if it's an amazing spot for the Eagles. But overall, yes, it is for me, Carr, Henry Ruggs. And then of course, to Devin's point, Darren Waller, who last week was the first time all year he saw fewer than 7 targets. Week 1 set an unsustainable floor for us with 19 targets, but then at least he coasted by on at least 7 targets per game until last week when he had just 5. The only issue is also because of the landscape of this slate, Darren Waller is pretty much the only direction you're going to spend over, 5 or 6K at tight end. So that's where we need to talk about game theory.
Rich, you alluded to a couple more angles you potentially wanted to work in here. Did Daigle knock him out? Is there any still standing for you?
Well, so the Raiders as a passing game, are living, the vertical passing world. Derek Carr's lived, on downfield throws so far this season. He's 6th in the NFL on average depth of target. He leads the NFL in completions of 20 or more yards. But the Eagles under Jonathan Gannon, they just sit back and they play shell coverage, 2 high safeties, the whole time. They try not to give up big plays. They're 2nd in the NFL in 20-yard pass plays allowed, and opposing passers have just a 6.6 average depth of target against them. It's the 2nd lowest rate in the league. Carr is the most fantasy points this season on throws over 15 yards downfield. Another quarterback who was in the same trajectory as Derek Carr just faced the Philadelphia Eagles, and Tom Brady, who coming into last week led the NFL in completions of 20 more yards and was a top 5 quarterback in average depth of target. And when he faced the Philadelphia Eagles, his average depth of target was just 5.6 yards, which was ahead of just Geno Smith last week. The last time Derek Carr faced a team that predicated itself on shell coverage and stopping the deep ball was the Los Angeles Chargers, and he had a season low 5.8 yards per pass attempt in that game. Right now, if you go to Sports Info Solutions, in terms of double move deep routes, the Raiders have 3 of the top 9 guys in amounts of routes run in double move deep routes in Renfro, Brian Edwards, and Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs has 8 targets over 30 yards downfield so far this season, and 5 of his catches and 240 of his receiving yards have come on those throws and the 2 touchdowns. So this is a team that's predicated on the vertical pass. They've lived on the vertical pass, and the Eagles have lived on shutting down the vertical pass. They want to bleed you out. And you would say, all right, well, there's the signal, right? It's going to be our Darren Waller week, right? Darren Waller's gone through some of these stretches before, right? Like, he goes dormant. He did it at the end of his not rookie year, end of his 2019 season, his breakout year. And then last year through 9 games, he only cleared 50 yards just twice. Like, we've seen stretches of him, and then he just goes on like just mega heaters. But interesting enough, though, is that the Eagles, because they play that shell coverage, and just like the Chargers, they face a ton of targets to tight ends. The Eagles have faced the 3rd most targets to tight ends per game, 8.8, but they've only given up 1 big game, and they faced a lot of good tight ends. Kyle Pitts, 4 for 31. George Kittle, 4 for 17. Travis Kelce, 4 for 23. Dalton Schultz was the one that got him for the 680 and 2 on Monday night to kind of keep the lights on for kind of a Darren Waller, kind of breakout game. But yeah, this Eagles defense, like, they just don't give you a lot to work with. They're really boring in that regard. And then if they're able to get home with 4 and this offensive line's a problem, then that creates a problem for the Raiders, because you can't run, like, the Raiders can't run the football. That's their biggest problem. You look at Josh Jacobs, he hasn't run for more than 3.4 yards per carry in a game yet this season. Wow. Like, their offensive line has just absolutely been bludgeoned. Obviously, we knew that coming in. They got rid of everybody, and it's came and played out that way. Because the Eagles, the way to beat them is they're very similar to the Chargers. Like, they want to invite you. They're going to be light boxes. They want to invite you to run the football. And the last time the Raiders played a team like that was the Chargers, and their offense did not look good at all. So yeah, it's interesting because I see this game getting a lot of steam, and from a matchup tactical leverage stance, like, I think it's a pretty bad matchup for the Raiders passing game.
You like Philadelphia +3?
I don't know about that, because I hate Nick Sirianni with a burning just passion right now. Oh my goodness, does he drive me insane? So I don't know if I like that, but I will say, just from like a DFS stance, like, I'm loading up on those guys, I'm probably more interested in the Eagles side, the Miles Sanders side. Me and Swaggy P are going to lose our bucks, our Shroot bucks on that. But but yeah, Devontae Smith's always there. I like the Quez Watkins call, especially with the Ertz now being removed from the picture. So yeah, it's an interesting matchup altogether. I'm ready just to burn it all down. Maybe we'll go Waller, Miles Sanders stacks and lose it all.
When I mentioned, like, you guys go deep into these games, like, double move deep route data, like, that is not what I saw coming. This is why Daigle and Hribar are the absolute best in the business.
I think
Gabe-
Hunter Renfrow just practices double move routes like all the time. I don't think he's ever run a single move route like it is in his whole life.
But also it's not 10 yards beyond the line of scrimmage. Like he knows exactly when to cut 5 yards out and then just go in.
No, he's second. He's second behind Jamar Chase in double move deep routes in the NFL.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, Jamar Chase is first.
Does that correlate with exercising? Is there some kind of correlation with the double move deep route?
I mean, you have to have good cardio, I feel like, to pull off those moves, because you've got to pull them off in a precise fashion, like a figure skate route running.
It's like cardio. Like now, Renfro's actually getting the work in. Like he's good for 54 yards a week, minus last week.
True. But he's not good for 58. Like he's no more than 54. That's about it. Whatever it is.
54 is his average.
He's got a ceiling for sure. All right, the last game on the slate, the 3 games we're going to feature, we're going to run it back and talk about our favorite plays on, amongst the games that we are not, we have not yet talked about, is Cincinnati at Baltimore. Baltimore is -6, 47 is the total. Lamar Jackson chalked it, burned us last week. Not really his fault. Just we
came on this show and just did the same argument we talked about Derek Carr. He wasn't going to get there because he lived on the deep ball and was facing a defense that stops the deep ball. We told everyone a week ago to not play Lamar Jackson on this show.
It was not only that, but also
Steve,
said,
you're the host. Listen to
the also said play Mark Andrews over Marquise Brown. Like literally said that.
Yeah, I had some at him, but like Andrews got tackled in the 1 yard. I'm just tilted because every running back I played in fantasy 4 years ago scored a touchdown for the Ravens last week. Bell scored, I think Freeman scored, I think Murray scored. And Lamar, did he might have threw 1 touchdown? I don't know. It wasn't
Andrews scored. He had Hollywood for a touchdown and missed him. Hollywood could have got there.
He was wide. I mean, right in his hands. Is Hollywood good? Like, do you want to?
Well, that was Lamar's fault. Lamar missed him on last week. Hollywood had his guy beat for the touchdown. It was right after the Chargers went for that 4th down that everyone lost their minds about in the third quarter. It was that, and then the Chargers still hold them to a field goal. So they were down 3 scores. Went for it, didn't get it, and we're still down 3 scores after they got the ball back again.
Maybe I'm thinking of a different play, a different drop. I get my Hollywood drops confused. I thought he had. Anyways,
it was only the 1 week. Calm down. Like Marquise, that's actually like why Marquise Brown is such an amazing play. Not to jump the quarterbacks here, but now I do wonder if they see the Bucs score and think, okay, like that's Marquise Brown. He's just a fluky, hot, cold player. Whereas we even talked about it. That was the matchup you didn't want to play him in. I didn't even want to play him in redraft unless I had to last week. Whereas this week now we get the Bengals defense. And we know that in Marquise Brown's 5 games prior to last week, he averaged 5.5 catches, 90 yards per game, and a full touchdown per game. So now is the week to go back to Marquise Brown.
By the way, Lamar is the guy. He's the quarterback popping in all the optimals right now on Wednesday night. I maxed it out at 70%. I don't want to get 100%. I want to kind of see a collection of options. And he's 70% on both DK and on FanDuel. So as of this recording on Wednesday night, he is currently the optimal quarterback. And are we going back to him, Daigle? Is Lamar? I played him last week. You guys told me I shouldn't have. I'm not a good person at listening, apparently. But how do you feel about Lamar versus the Bengals this week?
Love him. 33 pass attempts per game and 9.1 yards per attempt, of course, before what happened last week against the Chargers. But then also, since it was so matchup dependent, they obviously, in their clowning, their pantsing of the Chargers, didn't need to throw. Lamar Jackson's 26 pass attempts were just fine since they had 25 running back carries. And that all-star cast of 2013 running backs got over 100 yards combined together. All of them except Le'Veon Bell looked explosive in that matchup. Le'Veon Bell's just not going to look explosive at any point throughout his career anymore. But overall, yeah, it's a completely different attack, I would expect. And that's why I'm hoping the field is down on him this week, even though I feel like given the rest of the slate, everyone's probably going to not play so much Kyler, thinking their 17.5 point favoritism over the Texans, and rightfully so at home, is going to take away from Kyler's game script and overall ceiling. Same for Matthew Stafford. So I do wonder if everyone comes in heavily on Lamar Jackson. I don't know what you have at his projected ownership right now in the back.
Do you think people will just stay away from Kyler now because they just have no idea who to stack him with?
He wasn't played at all last week and threw 4 touchdowns.
He hasn't been for multiple weeks though.
Yeah.
If you go back, he's Like people are just, do you think that's the reason? Is because, everyone's just so predicated. Like you need to stack your quarterback, and everyone just looks at that Arizona situation. It's just like, what the hell, man? What do we do? Like, what do we do?
It's a good question. And he's also not running as much. So I would say, like, you're playing naked. I always thought you were playing naked just by himself, play solo, throw 3 or 4 touchdowns or run one in, not 2 touchdowns to one receiver. But where's the rushing gone? Is that something that's just a small sample thing, or you think that's something he's actually?
Well, they don't need it. I mean, the thing is it's not really needed right now either. So it's like hard to really say, like, it's disappeared in the offense, but they just haven't needed it. They're just smoking teams.
And like he's been awesome through the air. So like, why would they? They had, for everything that was wrong on the Browns side last week, the odds were stacked against the Cardinals significantly. I even had an early bet on the Browns before it reached a touchdown. Cardinals, just with the coaching COVID cluster, also no Chandler Jones, no Rodney Hudson. And Kyler banged up on the injury report for his shoulder throughout the week. There was no reason for them to win that game. And not only did they walk into Cleveland on the road and win that game, they just pants. They clowned the Browns out of the stadium altogether. Definitely need to be taking more serious than they are right now.
For all those reasons you just ran off, I made a donkey move, and my cash games on FanDuel, I was debating between Minnesota, the Vikings versus Carolina, and Cleveland versus Arizona. And all those reasons, I'm like, well, there's some wind. I'm not freaking out about it. Kyler's got a shoulder. We saw last year with the shoulder, he kind of fell off. He's got no coaches on the road, and like you said, pants them is a pretty good description.
You always play the guy versus Sam Darnold. You always play the defense. You always break the tie with Sam Darnold.
So someone's gonna have to take my cursor away from me, because I keep clicking DeAndre Hopkins. I've done it now in back-to-back weeks, knowing he's gonna be less than 5%, which is just stupid because it doesn't matter, because he's never gonna see double-digit targets again his entire life.
Yeah, well, it's a revenge. We'll talk about that soon enough. It's a revenge game, so maybe he gets like an extra target. He'll get like an 8th target this week or something like that. But he keeps scoring touchdowns, so like it kind of masks. It's masking like how low that target share is for Hopkins. As far as the Cincinnati-Baltimore game, by the way, I brought up that stat earlier about the Cardi's projected snaps per game.
This has got to be one of the lowest.
So yeah, that's the interesting thing. And rarely do we pick this kind of game, right, Hribar? This is the lowest game on the board as far as projected plays, 120.3. That's dead last. So just so you know, as far as the top to the floor, 133.5 is projected plays in Vegas, 120.3. And like, it's something that's not talked about a lot, but it's simple. Like, if the more plays, the more opportunity for fantasy points. There you go. And we're talking about a difference of like 14 plays or so. But does that matter enough for you, Hribar, as far as the Cincinnati-Baltimore game? Jamar Chase's team's won. He's got to get loose, and he's probably going to get loose every single week. So why is he catching another 70 yards?
It's tough because the margins are really tight. Like when we're talking about overall play volume, the team that's lowest in the NFL in plays. Like, so Bears games are the lowest. They average 118, plays per game. And I'm trying to pull up who's the highest, but I believe it's in the 120. So we're still talking just 10 plays in a game. Like, it's still, the margin's still really tight. And of course, like, you have teams like Philadelphia and the Raiders who haven't run the football at all this year, and they haven't really tried because, well, one, the Raiders can't, and then two, we talk about Nick Sirianni, but they're 5th and 7th in passing rate over expectation. These are two teams that are not. These are teams that run the football a lot when they can, when it's available to them. The Bengals have been a team that have run the football a lot. So that's why it projects to be kind of a slower, sluggish paced game. There are some interesting wrinkles in this game. I was glad Daigle kind of chose this one. I thought we might get Falcons, Dolphins mixed in. That game's getting a lot of buzz too.
That's second, by the way, second as far as total plays projected, but go ahead.
Yeah. But there are a couple of wrinkles in this game. So we talked about it last week too. So if you remember going back to last week's show, we talked about how Justin Herbert had struggled against the blitz. And what happened in that game last week? The Ravens just threw blitz after blitz after him, and Justin Herbert went 6 of 13 against the blitz for 58 yards. And if you're going to face the Ravens, like, how do you handle the blitz? Because they blitz the 4th highest rate in the NFL. That's what Wink Martindale's defense does. Their linebackers they don't have linebackers that have versatility. So like, they have to send these guys. They have to send extra guys. It's the personnel and the roster they built. Now, it's hurt them a lot this year because they don't have the back end pieces. They don't have the cornerbacks they had. Now, they had some good cornerback play last week that really helped out. But for the larger part of the sample of the season, the back end hasn't held up. So they've given up a lot of huge plays. So Joe Burrow so far to this point has been phenomenal against the blitz. He's been blitzed on 27% of his dropbacks, the 12th highest rate in the NFL. He's 34 of 47 against the blitz, 72% for you people trying to do the calculator at home. 10.5 yards per attempt, and 6 of his passing touchdowns have come against the blitz. So Joe Burrow, I mean, it's funny because in a larger week, a larger field week, he might slide a little bit unnoticed because it's the bye-apocalypse and we've got 4 top 10 quarterbacks on bye. He's still, projected as a top 10 guy. I think he would be more of like a fringe guy because most people see Baltimore and their brain instantly goes to elite defense, right? Like elite defense. But he's been good against the blitz. The Ravens, outside of last week's game, have shown they were vulnerable. Maybe it's a turning point. Maybe it's a fulcrum point for their season, but also we know what they're going to do. They're going to send a lot of heat and they're going to put a lot of players in one-on-one coverage situations against a team that has really viable wide receivers. It won last week against Big Mike, who was a little hobbled though in Keenan Allen, but we've got Jamar Chase, basically the best deep ball wide receiver through 6 games of his career, basically since Randy Moss right now. T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. So, I mean, if they're going to send heat and Joe Burrow is able to roll over his production that he's had against the blitz so far this season, there's some big play opportunities and splash play opportunities. And the Bengals lead the other tied with the Cowboys right now in touchdowns scored from outside of the red zone with 8. But they have the highest percentage of team touchdowns scored from outside of the red zone in the NFL. So there could be some big splash play upside here. We just wish they'd start throwing some downfield targets to T. Higgins.
All right. Let's say when you say splash plays and downfield attempts, that's when it's only going to be Jamar Chase. Chase has 14 of the team's 19 targets, 20 plus yards downfield this year. Burrow goes one direction when he's under duress or asked to throw deep, even though Higgins did profile as a deep threat out of Clemson. When he was healthy with Burrow in 6 games last year, he was the team's leading opportunity receiver, 20 plus yards downfield. It just has all gone to Chase. So you can play Higgins if you want. The past 2 weeks in particular, since Higgins' return, he has only 3 fewer targets than Chase, but also Chase nearly has 200 more air yards because that's the direction Burrow's going.
I was keeping my eye on chat. I apologize if you touched on him. Did we talk about Mixon? I know we're talking a bunch about Burrow and the receiving.
He just started. Well, we went on a weird tangent and other things, and we just kind of got back to the game.
We started talking about Texans Cardinals.
Okay. I thought I heard his name in passing for a second, but I'm like, oh, did I miss the Mixon talk? Well, do we like Mixon this week?
Yeah, I like Mixon. We saw that he was healthy at least, whereas P. Ryan had nearly 30 more snaps than him 2 weeks ago. Last week, Joe Mixon had 45 snaps to Chris Evans 16, and he actually outtouched Chris Evans 24-6 until the Bengals had a 27-0 lead in the 4th quarter. That's when they started scaling him back and giving Evans and Travion Williams more run. Evans was still mixed in on passing downs, but just the fact that Joe Mixon, whether this is sustainable or not, is another question. But Joe Mixon did at a season high 20% target share in that game. And so if we think it's going to be a competitive game, then of course, that's certainly an option to run out there as well in a skinny stack or run back.
Daigle, what do you have for me as far as the receivers? I know we touched on Brown there for a second. Andrews has been really, really good of late. The price is still pretty good on DK especially. And then we saw Rashad Bateman get worked in, made some catches last week. His salary is still really, really cheap on DK. You have to assume, if nothing else, he's going to get more snaps than what he got last week. I think he's 3.4K, I want to say. That feels like an interesting cheapie. What's the grade for Bateman after game number 1 for him?
A cheapie, especially if you think his role was going to increase, which of course we all do. They even said they weren't going to throw him into the fire and put him down on every play. We didn't expect that. But also I was pretty encouraged from his usage in his first game off injured reserve. 65% of the snaps, a 22.2% target share, also second on the team among their wide receivers anyways, and routes run over Devin Duvernay. We have to wait and see Sammy Watkins' status. But since Watkins did average 17 routes per game for the Chiefs across 3 seasons with them, I would imagine as the more experienced slot player, that's where they throw him into. Bateman, of course, did run 91% of his routes from the slot last year in college, but prior to that, he was more of a boundary receiver. So he can be moved anywhere, but I would think they just keep him on the boundary and 2 wide sets. So if we think his role is going to increase overall, it's really not a bad option on DraftKings.
And 5.3 on FanDuel too. That seems pretty playable. It's like $800 from the floor.
That's pretty cheap. And he was more of a 5 yards per target is not sexy. I understand. He was more of a chain mover. All 4 of his receptions went for first downs, but did also have a drop pass. And again, we were just hoping that his role increases. So you have to have a little bit of hope when playing him, but overall, I don't think it's a bad play.
You got a thought, Hribar?
No, not much. I mean, he is what he is, right? Like I think he's a way better game stack play than he is like to keep chasing like seasonal formats.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I think he's more of like he's still just a guy to kind of wait and see, I think, and see what happens. But yeah, I mean, I have no pushback on anyone that wants to take a shot on him.
All right, those are the 3 games. We'll talk about our favorite players at other positions in just a second. We're going to give you the Evan Silva fun fact. We promised that as the new bit. I'll give you a second, Daigle, to think of one as I talk about.
I mean, I already know it. We had an event for the weekend. So.
You got one good to go.
I didn't actually know it was going to become a segment. I thought I was going to naturally work it in weekly. But I will say, as someone without kids, Dean knows, I try to log off on Friday night and Saturday. I don't always do a great job of it, but my Saturdays literally until sunrise golf by myself. And then I go for a long trail run. And then after that, I usually update some stuff just to get up to date with injuries and whatnot. And I got done around 6 p.m. this past week. Schedule was completely clear until I needed to wake up and build some more DFS lineups and make some overnight edits. And so I texted him because, of course, he's upstairs sleeping. He just naps all afternoon. And then I was like, hey, like I'm free now. Let's go get some steaks and wine. Let's just have a good dinner tonight. And he goes, no, like I'm staying in. I'm trying to be healthy, bro. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. I'll go out and get dinner myself. No big deal. And then I think I walked upstairs around midnight or 1. I was up just like watching some late college games. And I saw the man trying to be healthy had DoorDashed 7-Eleven. That's your first red flag. He DoorDashed 7-Eleven, but then he DoorDashed a carton of milk with 5 different cookie selections. And that was his dinner, trying to be healthy. And then he just walked back upstairs and went back to bed. That's what he ate. And then just went upstairs.
That is pretty amazing.
This is the GOAT himself. These are his habits.
Does he drink the milk the same way he drinks the jug of water? In the same sort of, I just picture he's like the liquids out of jugs, apparently.
Well, I also recently discovered, I was offended. I recently discovered he just drinks Bailey's on ice. That's it. Just Bailey's on ice. And so I don't know what happened with that milk, like if he put it in ice or if he drank the whole gallon. But either way, all I know is the entire carton was gone in one day. I didn't know that was humanly possible. So that's all I know. I saw what the trash can had offered me the evidence.
You mentioned, it's funny, you mentioned naps, and I'm going to mention Chopper one more time because I heard Head Chopper say on a previous podcast he hates naps. Now look, I know we all disagreed, or we had a disagreement on the red zone. I couldn't believe you guys are not on team red zone. Hribar, you got to be on team nap, right? Who's anti-nap?
Well, no, I'm a cat napper, but what's the definition of nap? See, like, so my wife, she can't nap. She just goes back to sleep. Like she just like goes to sleep for like 2 hours. See, I can close my eyes for like 10 minutes and like be good. Like I guess the definition of a cat nap, but like, I mean, I don't consider like what she does is taking a nap. Like she just like, you can still go back. Like you don't get into your bed for 2 hours and call that a nap. Like
how long is the world's longest nap? Like when is it no longer?
Like what are we defining a nap as? Because I'll close my eyes on the couch or the hammock or like sitting on the back of the patio for 10 minutes and be good to go. Like I count that as a nap.
You can't nap for 4 hours.
The entire thesis of a nap is like to refresh anyway. So I think just closing your eyes in silence is totally fine. It's like meditation. Like you're just fine. I know the proper way to nap, which no one does, but the proper way to nap, because it takes the average human being, I think, 5 to 7 minutes to fall asleep. And then you're supposed to nap no longer than 32 minutes, because after 32 minutes, it becomes sleep inertia. And that's why you feel foggy afterwards, because usually your nap is over 32 minutes. Knowing all of that information, I usually still sleep an hour and a half.
I feel like I learned a lot. I wasn't expecting these answers. That was very good.
Well, it also takes, Dean, 22 minutes for caffeine to hit your veins. And so they call it the nappuccino. If you take a few espresso shots, then get that 25 to 32 minute nap in and then wake up, the caffeine hits you as you're waking up. And it's like the ultimate high.
The nappuccino.
Or just do drugs, whatever.
Yeah, no, SEMA segue into our sponsor. Stop throwing your money away. It's time to check out Jock Market, the app where daily fantasy becomes a stock exchange. You buy and you sell shares of players in real time for real money. Download now for a 100% match up to $50 using the promo code Grinders. And get this, if you not turn a profit this week, Jock Market, they're going to cover your losses in your very first event. Download Jock Market in the app or Play stores and check out jockmarket.com. That's JOCKMKT.com. Jockmarket.com. Use the code Grinders for a 100% deposit match up to $50 on your first deposit. All right, let's knock out some of our favorite quarterbacks we've not yet talked about just yet. Daigle, we have the Sean McVay revenge. I don't know whatever you want to call it. Sean McVay versus Goff. This is one of those games where it's like, well, I don't know if I can play the Rams because they're gonna blow them out. And it's like, well, okay, they're gonna blow them out, but how do they get those 40 points, right?
They just blew out the Giants.
Those points happen. Like they still count for sure. Kyler against Houston, same deal. Like you got to assume they're going to beat up on Houston pretty good. Rodgers versus Detroit, super interesting. Who do we have as far as our feel free to give thoughts on those quarterbacks and anybody that's off the board that I've not yet touched on. I don't know who I threw that to.
Yeah, I mean, Matthew Stafford had only 28 pass attempts, but when you're that good, it doesn't even matter. Still threw 4 touchdowns, 250 yards. Like I told you, in mid and high stakes, he was one of the optimal quarterbacks to roster, Dak being the other, since so much roster percentage came down on Patrick Mahomes and Taylor Heineke, who was just, he was Taylor Heineke. He was just outright bad. Didn't help anybody. And also 8.9 yards per attempt for Stafford. So overall, yeah, sure. I mean, they're going to build a comfortable lead. And they're going to keep their foot on the gas. We saw that they had no issues benching both Henderson and Stafford when they got that lead. But of course, that's what everyone worries about. And there's only one way you get that lead is when your good players are good. So overall, like Stafford, Henderson, Kupp, like they're all in play again. The one question I have at quarterback, actually, Rich, I know you have your finger on the pulse in this situation better than most people. Do you think?
Do I?
Well, we're about to find out. Do you think Justin Fields is going to be asked to throw, or are we going to get the same game plan as usual? Since, of course, teams have thrown on the Bucs at a league high 40.8 attempts per game. It's just a matter of that has not been Laser and Nagy's calling so far.
Yeah, a big assumptional of rational coaching game for the Bears. We'll see if we get it. I will say though, this is a terrible spot for Justin Fields. I know people want to make this out to be good. He's been so bad against the blitz so far this season, and he was bad in college against the blitz, and he's facing the blitz heaviest team in the NFL. I mean, it's really hard for me to get there. I know people want to talk about the dropbacks and his ability to run, and he actually scrambled and made some plays last week, and maybe that's enough. Maybe just throwing him in the hair and fire situation is enough to scare this out of him. But man, I think he's got such a track record of being a slow processor and terrible against the blitz, going back even to his college days. And it's been a problem in the NFL that, I mean, I feel like the Wolves are about to be called on him this weekend. So, I mean, it's a short week. We've been chasing that flop leg. Everyone kind of knows like he's capable. He's going to have a QB1 scoring week. He's definitely going to, but I mean, I don't know, man. I don't feel great about the spot for him.
Yeah, I only asked because that's when I look, that's the one place I would want to spin down with some big dogs.
Yeah, I could quarterback. Yeah, I wouldn't,
unless someone wants to sell me on Tua.
So I wouldn't do it in a small field tournament. You like if you're gonna play Fields, he's completely large field. Like he's completely large field tournament.
He's the burn your $20 on the millie.
Yeah, he's large field tournament. Like you're not gonna go with because I know the way you play. Like he's probably like not a guy like you probably like you want to get your 5 max like. He's tough to play in your short fields. No pun intended. Yeah, I mean, I do think that that Falcons Dolphins game will get talked up a little bit. On both sides. Just because one we're short on. Kind of back and forth teams. These are two teams that really can't run the ball well. I mean, the Falcons do want to try to run it. Like they'll try to run it if they can. But the Dolphins have basically thrown their hands in the air and said, nah. Since week 1, Miami quarterbacks have dropped back to pass 53, 57, 35, 44, and 51 times. Like they just have no interest in trying to figure out what this offensive line can hold up and this gaggle of vagabonds they have in this running backfield rotation can do. So, I mean, I think Tua's probably going to throw it, 40 times. So you're going to get the volume on that side. And he offers a little bit of Konami. He's not a full Konami guy, but can get you 20 plus rushing. And he might get Devontae Parker back against this Dean Pease, defense that also is going to blitz and leave guys one-on-one. So, I mean, I think that game will get talked up. Rodgers, I think, is the one guy, like I'm looking to see if he does go overlooked. And Washington has allowed a top 7 score now in every game but one so far this season. And they've allowed 22 passing points per game. So it feels like a really good spot for Rodgers. I don't know if, like I said, we'll get Heineke to punch back. I mean, it looks like he's just about burnt out his wick on making us like kind of respect him a little bit. It's just too bad now. But I mean, he averaged 1.7 air yards per completed pass last week.
Against the Chiefs too.
That is hilariously bad. So
is that a worse week than Robbie Anderson, who had 11 targets and 11
11
yards?
targets, 11 yards. Oh man,
What a worse week, arguably.
Yeah, I joked with Ian Hartitz on Twitter today because he was pumping up Robbie Anderson. I said everyone gets a turn every week. We just pass him along. It's someone will get a week to hype him up. Eventually, someone will be right. I was there last week. I was in on him last week. I know Daigle was a couple weeks ago. I forget who they played.
Oh, I
Daigle
remember. I mentioned him in a skinny stack last week on the show, and I got off Justin Jefferson. I went to Dalvin Cook, Robbie Anderson skinny stacks, but Robbie Anderson was still like, even 9% of mid stakes is too comfortable for Robbie Anderson. I thought I was going to get him at like 2%.
He was like $12 on Yahoo and like, $2 above. I don't know if you guys play there. $2 above the floor. So I had a fair bit of him over there. And it's so weird. He scored a touchdown and he's still kind of, he wasn't good.
the Mike Davis game of scoring a touchdown and still not being good.
By the way, I'll just say this as far as the quarterbacks. You mentioned Fields, and I know it's the highest variant thing to predict defense. But this feels like an awesome pay up on the Buccaneers week.
Defenses in general, like you've got the Patriots, you've got the Bucks, you've got
Packers.
the Rams, you've got they're like all those defenses are just look like pretty great objective plays. I want to play against Zach Wilson every week. Like if I can afford the defense versus Zach Wilson, I want to try to get there. But yeah, the Bucks too also they all look good. All those defenses look good.
It's a good general thought to maybe spend up on defenses this week because a lot of people just want to save salary because they embrace that variance, and any team can score 2 goofy touchdowns. That's just how that goes sometimes. But all right, let's move on. Let's talk about some running backs. Hribar, give me some running backs that are on your list that we've not yet talked about.
Who do we talk about? We talked about Miles Sanders.
Henry.
Yeah, we talked about Henry. Oh, well, if Antonio Gibson doesn't play, JD McKissic, man. I get it. Like people think he's just like an ancillary, satellite back, but we saw when Antonio Gibson went down last year, he played 65 and 88% of the snaps in those games. He even got goal line carries in those games. Last week when Antonio Gibson left the game, Jarrett Patterson played 2 snaps. Now, some of that at the end of the game was game script, but JD McKissic is a guy that this staff that's there has let him elevate into being a ball carrier. So, if Antonio Gibson doesn't play, he's such an easy bring back, I feel like, with Rodgers and Devontae, because he gives you the best of both worlds, right? Like if he's going to get the touches and carries and then also be the guy that if all hell breaks loose, is just getting just peppered with dump offs, you've got a high floor for his price because on both sites, he is really cheap. I'm trying to see what he is in DK because that's obviously where we would prefer to play him. He's 5K. He's 5K on DraftKings. And then he's 5'7" on FanDuel. So, he is a guy I'll be monitoring this Antonio Gibson thing throughout the rest of the week and seeing what we get. Because I feel like some people, even if Gibson is out, people will talk up Patterson because he's the hot new thing, a hot new rookie, and you'll pick him up on waivers. And then they also will draw that McKissic is just like a pass catching back and he's not going to get any elevation, but au contraire.
Yeah, he just recently had 16 touches against the Chiefs, and only 8 of those were catches. The others were, of course, carries, because that's how they're treating him. So Patterson is just he's a non-athlete. He plays special teams well. That's why he's on the active roster. But he's not the same guy who was basically the Darrell Henderson version of small school production in college. In the NFL, there are just so many more athletes that can easily tackle him. He's not the guy who's going to carry a workload ahead of McKissic.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Darrell Henderson. He looks pretty good too this week.
That's the weekly though. DraftKings just won't do it. FanDuel at least got Henderson to 8K. DraftKings they're not even going above 7K, even though Henderson keeps handling every single touch. Even last week, until the Rams took a 38-3 lead, Henderson had 22 of the 24 touches. And now we got Sony Michel DMP on a Wednesday. So it's just the train keeps moving as well for Henderson every week.
6.6K seems too cheap for sure.
Crazy.
Swift is another guy. Swift is the best running back on his team. He's the best receiver on his team, and he's game script proof, right? He'll stay on the field and just catch passes if they're down by 20. I assume. It's not fun to get attached.
Well, he's not game script proof actually. Okay, you're not going to get the game script that is proof to him though.
Well, no points. Points are a problem.
Well, the neutral game script is his problem, which the Lions are never in. They've trailed for 100% of their second half snaps.
That's
So,
amazing.
That's his problem. Neutral game script, because that's when you see Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams is an afterthought running pass routes and involved in the passing game. But in neutral game script, that's when you see Jamal Williams get peppered in for drives, and he's even stolen a few green zone touches from DeAndre Swift. But the Lions have been so bad. DeAndre Swift is just growing nuts in the second half of his games. He has the most fantasy points scored in the fourth quarter this season. He leads the NFL in receptions in the fourth quarter, and 47% of all of his PPR points have come in the fourth quarter. So I mean, there's no reason not to believe it doesn't happen again this week. But the Lions, the game script that will prevent him from ever going off is the neutral game script.
Which is good though, because that's the Lions.
Right.
Like you said,
It's not going to happen.
They've had a lead for 2 plays and I believe 7 minutes and 40 seconds all year long.
And they haven't run an offensive snap with the lead. They took the lead against the Ravens, but then they gave it right back up.
They had it against Minnesota, right? With like 30 seconds to go or a minute to go.
Same thing. They took the lead in 2 games, but they've never held the ball ahead on the scoreboard.
Man, that's wild. I also wrote down like Damian Harris versus the Jets, Chuba versus the Giants, and Uncle Lenny versus Chicago. Those guys do anything for you, Daigle?
Yeah, Damian Harris is an interesting game theory play because it seems like everyone wants Ramondre Stevenson to be a thing, but it's just not happening. Like, yeah, he ran one more route than Brandon Bolden as the James White version for the Patriots this past week. But overall, even on Stevenson's touchdown, on the 1 yard line, Damian Harris got hurt the carry prior, came off the field, and then Stevenson got put on for that luck box touchdown. Damian Harris still had 18 touches. Like, he's still the leading running back within a team that is favored by 7 points in this game. We've already seen the Patriots as well play Zach Wilson once in week 2. He had 4 picks and averaged 6.3 yards per attempt. So pretty favorable game script for Harris, especially if no one's going to get there, thinking Stevenson is going to be integrated heavily. Also, I don't know if I'm going to get there, but I think at least a good late swap position is going to be James Conner. Does have double digit on FanDuel only, because Conner doesn't have more than 1 target in any game this year. That's not his role, but does have double digit carries in 5 of 6 contests. Again, we mentioned it earlier. The Cardinals are 17-point favorites at home against the Texans, who are only starting Davis Mills because they have no other option. So I think it's a pretty good game script for Conner as well.
Is Edmonds ever going to score a touchdown? Who's going to score first, him or the dude on New England?
Which dude of New England?
Anybody in New England.
I assume he's talking about Jacoby Myers.
Oh, Jacoby Myers. Okay. I'm trying to think of any of them scoring touchdowns.
Yeah, I don't know. But Myers did get he scored a 2-point conversion and he was in the end zone. He did not get electrocuted. Like, it's not that, like, he's fine. He survived it, but it was only worth 2 points. I guess doesn't count.
Yeah, he also had a 2-point conversion. We know that he can now touch the paint without dying. We have proof of that now. So that's not the reason why he's not getting in. He's just not getting in. Chase Edmonds also does look awesome. He looks so good between the 20s, but he may die inside the 20 though. They may actually take him out for health purposes.
The end zone is lava. All right, wide receivers. Devontae, we talked about Henry, what a phenomenal play is. The only reason that's keeping you from that.
Talk about Devontae Adams every week.
Yeah, now it's Devontae versus Washington, the nuts versus the nuts. Like, in the nuts spot, like, what are we going to say? Like, Hribar, tell the people that Devontae Adams is a good play this week. Of course he is. It's just a matter of lineup construction and all that stuff. And I mean, prioritization. Ideally, if you can get Henry and Adams in the same lineup, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. Of course, everybody else is going to try to do the same thing until they realize.
Yeah, and I mean, it sets up Washington is another blitz-heavy team, and Devontae Adams, 55% of his targets are when he's come out of the slot. And you look at some of the guys that have really torched Washington. It's a lot of slot production. Cole Beasley, 11 catches, Keenan Allen, 9 catches, Tyreek Hill, 9, Sterling Shepard, 9. So I mean, if you're going to send blitzes, and Adams is already working in that role. I mean, they're constantly getting him open, which is crazy because everyone and their grandma knows like they're predicated on getting Devontae Adams the football, and they're still getting him open. Yeah, really good spot. Like you guys know, for Devontae Adams. I don't have a ton of like off the cuff receivers, so I'll let Daigle go and run a few.
Go ahead, Daigle.
I mean, Quez Watkins is my sneaky one, but I guess it's not really off the cuff either. But Calvin Ridley comes back, still top 10 and target rate per route run at 26%. did not go to London, but now he's going to return, and it's a very good spot against the Dolphins defense that just allowed Trevor Lawrence even to go over 300 yards because they're so banged up. You know, they lead the league in cover one, man coverage. That's why they gave Byron Jones and Xavier Howard lucrative contracts, and both of those players are just extremely injured right now. May not play again this week. I believe they were DNP on Wednesday. So something to monitor, because that's how we would attack the Dolphins through their secondary then. And then if Devontae Parker is available, like that's still someone who, leads the team in end zone targets still. And so I'm fine going right back to him. Jalen Waddle's role changed. He had a higher depth of target this past week with Tua, but also remember, like, they didn't have anyone. They didn't even have Preston Williams in that game. Mac Hollins ran a route on 100% of Tua's dropbacks because they were so disheveled at wide receiver for all their bodies available. So if we get Parker and Waddle back, like, yeah, I don't mind going back to Parker.
That's a good segue to tight end. You know, Gesicki and the tight on the other side, Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts had a big breakout game over there in London, obviously. We talked about Kelsey, of course, if Kelsey, by all means, same deal with Andrews. But, these guys are a little bit cheaper, but still, they come with some promise. Hawkinson in Detroit. I didn't get a chance to check his snap count. I was playing through an injury. I saw him on the field a few times. I think he had a decent week. Is he somebody you consider? Yeah. Is he just like playing mostly every single snap? I assume he is, just kind of toughing it out. Is that what's going on there?
He's still out there.
Yeah, okay. He's out there, and it's just
third in routes run per game for tight ends. I mean, it's just, you have to just survive the golf weeks.
He's been injured too. Like, he's just, the past couple of weeks he's been injured. I believe also DNP again today, but that's kind of been their routine. That whole team is like so banged up. Jamal Williams, DeAndre Swift, they're all on the practice report weekly.
Just to backtrack for a second, like a Raymond or an Amon St. Brown, any of those guys interesting if, on the comeback against the Rams, assuming they're going to have to chuck the ball? I mean, interesting is a relative term. You know what I mean, though? They're cheap. And, cross your fingers, throw a dart, that kind of thing.
Considering we just saw season highs from DeAndre Swift and snap 78%, routes run on golf dropbacks. Also his 76% share of backfield touches was a season high as well. Like, I think that's kind of the run back in any game script, since he'll be out there in negative game script. Also under wide receivers, I forgot to mention Sterling Shepard, by the way.
Rich, your favorite tight end in that Atlanta-Miami game? Do you have a preference?
Yeah, Kyle Pitts. He's better at football than Mike Gesicki, but I guess I'm fine with Gesicki too. I like his role a lot. We've seen him, he's sixth among all tight ends in targets. I get him wrong though. Like, whenever I'm on Gesicki, I get him wrong. I was on him 2 weeks ago in Tampa and I didn't get anything. I feel like anytime I go to him, he lets me down. But hey, if you're looking at their Atlanta is 31st in touchdown rate allowed to opposing tight ends. So you get the one guy outside of Devontae Parker who's active as a clasher among those wide receivers in Miami.
Is there still value in that Ricky Seals-Jones price on DK? It's steadily moving up. I believe it's 3.7 now.
He's on the field. He doesn't come off the field, so why not?
That's still too cheap, right? If you just want to flat out punt it.
He doesn't come off the field.
Yeah, and
he's the primary end zone guy. So, like, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I have no problem if people go back. The one position that didn't get decimated this week was tight end. I mean, we lost Schultz, who a lot of people have been going to, but Knox probably wasn't going to play anyways because he broke his hand. But that's really it. Like, all the other tight ends that are off the board were guys we never really cared about.
Yeah, I think, that's really the cheap way. I also think Tyler Higbee's going to kind of sneak through by the end of the week. And they just moved their backup tight end, Johnny Munt, season-ending injured reserve. And we saw this past week, Higbee did play 100% of the team snaps and ran around on all but 2 of Stafford's drop backs. So I actually think he'll get lost in the shuffle despite having a 30-plus team total for the Rams. So that's another way to get sneaky exposure if you want to go like Henderson and Higbee rather than Cooper Kupp.
And then we have a Cordell Patterson take. I saw his price is pretty egregious, but he keeps finding a way to score touchdowns.
FanDuel is not playing with Cordell Patterson.
You said you like it when they jam up the prices, Reeves.
I do, man. Yeah, because listen, for some reason 2 weeks ago, he ended up being really chalky on FanDuel. And it was like he was like 6'3" or 6'4", which was
I didn't get it.
Which and he got there, but like, so yeah, make him 8K. If people want to keep playing him, make him 8K. Like, yeah, dude, I have no problem with it. He has not performed on even as hot as he's run. He has not performed on 8K levels. But hey, dude, go nuts, man! Make people pay for it.
Is there anything? It's Wednesday night. Is there anything we should keep an eye on? Anything as far as injury wise that might open things up, or it's just
Gibson.
Yeah.
What else do we got? This is more your wheelhouse, Daigle. You always do the look ahead injury tweet.
Yeah, I'm looking through my injuries right now. Well, the
It's a long
issue is
list.
it's also just a lot of bad players like T.Y. Hilton. Oh, no, that game's not on the main slate. Okay, so we have McKissick. We have Kadarius Toney, which would also not only why I like Sterling Shepard since he has a 22% target share in every game, but also for some reason without Kadarius Toney and Darius Slayton, they played Dante Pettis in the slot.
They had to. They had no choice.
So if Dante Pettis sneaks under, like that dude somehow saw 12 targets as in the second most routes run behind Sterling Shepard. Like he's more than viable if you want to sneak him in there in a run back on DK in particular, since that's where you're going to get your receptions at. Is Zach Ertz available this game?
He is.
Okay. You got Zach Ertz there. Diami Brown was back to his usual routine and second most routes on the team without Curtis Samuel and Cam Sims in that game. So that's one. Yeah. And then Quintus Cephas is still on. He broke his arm. I think he's out for the year. And so that would lead to the Khalif Raymond play. If you want to get there, I still think it's more DeAndre Swift though.
Daigle, the last thing before we step aside and get out of here, the chat wants to know, and this is a callback to a previous conversation as far as Evan Silva. What were his cookies of choice? Did he go like all chocolate chip, like all in? Did he get a variety pack, like a little bit of the M&M, chocolate chips, and peanut butter? Does he have a preference as far as cookies?
It was a variety. He got the little elf chocolate covered like wafers almost. That was one of them, just like double chocolate covered wafers. He got a bag of chocolate gluten-free pretzels. Don't understand that order at all. And then he got a roll of Chips Ahoy chocolate chunk and also a roll of Chips Ahoy soft and chewy, which is my personal favorite, especially if you sneak them in the microwave for like 15 seconds. They're incredible.
Yeah, I'm a soft bake guy all the way.
Yeah.
But what power rank, Hribar, the number one flavor for a cookie? What is it?
I am I think just the perfect chocolate chip is money, dude. Yeah. Like you just don't go wrong there.
It's a classic.
You know who has really good chocolate chip cookies, man? Is Sam's Club.
Really?
Their bakery, Sam's Club Bakery. They make these big soft baked chocolate chip cookies, man. They're actually.
Do you have to buy like 30 of them? You got to buy them in bulk, or you can just buy
like
one?
No, they come in like a pack like 15, like sleeves of 5, like 3 sleeves of 5.
That's one sitting. That's good.
Well, my kid, Daigle's been at my house. My kid's like, my 16-year-old eat like 6 of them and be like, oh, cool. I'm like, dude, we just brought these home. You just ate 6 giant cookies.
Also, Dean, you have to understand like the Reeves family, outside of Rich, like none of them experience food or not adventurous whatsoever. They will literally like only eat a piece of chicken, maybe with buffalo sauce, maybe, and a burger with nothing on it. That is literally what they eat. They don't adventure beyond that.
Hey, whatever works, man. Well, they're young.
It works out for me because I always get to pick the restaurant. So it's whatever I want to eat.
Yeah, and it's Skyline Chili. That's what we
never.
No.
This is the kind of stuff you get when you listen to us live. You get to ask such questions like, "What cookies does Evan Silva eat?"
I also, although the perfect chocolate chip is a really good answer, this is an egregious answer. I really like the ones that are extremely unhealthy. Well, they're all unhealthy for you, but those ones that are like just dough and sugar that you get around the holidays, it just has a flop piece of hard icing on top, and the rest is just like sugar cookie you can fold. I like those a lot.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the sugar cookie or the snickerdoodle. Like those are all money too.
Let us know in the comment section, the most overrated, most underrated, your power rankings. Let us know in the comment section on the old YouTube. Do subscribe, turn on notifications. We do appreciate everybody that listens to us live. Again, most of us listens to us on the RG podcast feed. You guys should like and follow that as well too. If you're not doing that, or watching us on YouTube on a Thursday afternoon or something like that. I always say this, everybody knows who you guys are. It's week 7. They all know, but just in case somebody kind of wandered into this podcast for the first time, Rich, tell them where they can find your content.
Sharpfootballanalysis.com, at Lord Reeves on Twitter, a face for podcasts apparently. And you can always find me Wednesday at 9 Eastern with Daigle and Dean.
This very show. Daigle?
6 teams are on bye whenever we're power ranking cookies. At J Daigle on Twitter, a good football show on iTunes and Spotify where we do team previews, weekly previews, NBC Sports Edge, waiver wire column on Tuesdays if you're into that thing.
We had rock movies last week, so yeah.
Well, there were some people commenting in the chat. I meant to bring that up, but unfortunately we ran out of time. We got to step aside.
Someone mentioned Walking Tall last week in the comments as well. Walking Tall is good. Still good.
We
So
brought
some of
that
the
up.
other guys, and the other guys isn't a rock. He's in like one
That's
scene.
not
It's-
a Rock movie.
It's a good scene. It's a funny scene. I'll give it to him. But like, because everybody's, wait, the Rock's in this? Oh wait, now he's not in this. Never mind. Spoiler. My apologies. He's in it for a brief period with Samuel L. Jackson. All right, that was Rich Hribar. That was John Daigle. That was producer Devin behind the proverbial glass. That was the NFL Pick Six Show for Week 7. Good luck this week. Thanks a lot for watching. We're out of here. Oh.